God bless you, Benny, for praying for us in your language. That certainly wasn't Southern. That was like a lightning bolt speech. We here in the South draw our words out long time. God bless you. That was wonderful. And thank you, congregation, for being such good singers. Man, it's like we got a whole choir here in the room, not just up front. Well, I agree with that, but anyway, I'm up here in the front, and it's just glorious. It's just overwhelming. And so thank you so much for just opening up and singing. I've been in church a long time and stood up in front of people thousands of times and been around the singing in churches, and sometimes it's pitiful. I'll just go out and say it. Half the congregation is not singing at all, and some have already started their sleeping round before I get up. It's just sort of plain vanilla. Y'all are primo. Yeah. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Title of my message today, my thoughts with you is Wake Up, Make a Difference. Wake up, make a difference. We're in a series of messages called the Sermon on the Mount, which is actually 3 chapters in Matthew 5, Matthew 6, and Matthew 7. All are Jesus' words. If you have what I call a red letter Bible where Jesus' words are in red, all those 3 chapters are solid red. It's just Jesus. It's called the Sermon on the Mount because he was around the Sea of Galilee. On one side of the Sea of Galilee, there's a sloping hill. I've actually stood on that hill. It's like a perfect amphitheater. It's not, when you think of a hill or a mountain, you think it's like this. It's just a sloping hillside. And I imagine Jesus was at the top of that, and the people that gathered were just below him. So it'd be somewhat like this is here, where I'm above you and you're out that way like that. So when you think of the Sermon on the Mount, it's Jesus standing there with the crowd just below him and around him. It would have been a crowd of all kinds of people. There'd been young, old, families, children, teenagers. There'd have been some soldiers there. There was all kinds of different jobs and what they would have done. Their professions would have been numerous. But he draws them in at the very beginning, as you've been with Brother Jordan here over the last 2 Sundays, in what's called the Beatitudes. And that's the first 12 verses of Matthew 5. And they're called the Beatitudes because Beatitudes means blessed. And each one of those verses begin with the word blessed, or the poor in spirit, pure in heart, the poor in spirit, pure in heart, those that are hungering after righteousness. It all begins with blessed, though they're called the Beatitudes. And then he continues on, as will be today, in Matthew 5, 13 through 16. I grew up right here in Little Rock. I went to elementary school at Williams, which is just up 8th Street, the far end. I went to junior high at Forest Heights. I went to Hall High School for my high school time. I grew up right here. Some of my earlier years, I was at a church that my grandparents went to. If you remember, I grew up with my grandparents, so there's a reason why I went with them, Gain Street Baptist Church, downtown Little Rock. But as I got older in my teenage years, I went to a church called Highlands Baptist Church, which was on Mississippi up toward Cantrell. Johnny Jackson was the pastor during our years there, and I've always said I was the most blessed person to have been under his preaching and his ministry for that dozen or so years. So Forest Highlands was very important in my life. I believe my very call to the ministry. At first, I thought I was called to be a missionary. It just didn't work out. But that was during Brother Johnny's time, so he's a great influence in my life. I met my wife at Forest Highlands Baptist Church, and 50 years later, we're still together. But we met. She had been hired as the organist and pianist there, and when I came back from my journey in Europe, which is a long story in itself, when I came back and there in my church for the first Sunday, there she was, this cute thing with a short dress. She would play the organ for a while, then she'd prance across the piano. Did she go back there again? And so we met, and Forest Highlands became very special to me because of that, obviously, and I served as a deacon there at Forest Highlands. This is all that's left of Forest Highlands Baptist Church. That's a brick, by the way. About 3, 4, 5 months ago, it was bulldozed down. Linda and I, we go up Mississippi now and usually go to Food Giant or the pharmacy. Pharmacy we go to every day. Young people don't get that. The old people, oh yeah, all the time. But when we go by there, where Linda will say at first, she says, I'm so sad. And I'll say the same thing, I'm sad too. That was my church. That was the most, consequential church I had during those years, and certainly the formation of who I am. And it's no more. No more. Our text is Matthew 5, verses 13 through 16, if you either look at the screens or look in your Bible. Many people through the years have asked me, when they've not read the Bible before, they'd say, Pastor, I would like to read the Bible. Where should I start? I always give 2 answers. The first one is, I say, go to the Gospel of John. Read John. It's in the simplest language possible, first of all, but it will tell you exactly who Jesus is and what he came to do. The other Gospels do it as well. They're just a little more involved. So John. The second thing I tell them to read is Matthew chapter 5, chapter 6, and chapter 7. That's Jesus' words to you on how to live the Christian life. So let's read it. Matthew 5, verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good works, your good deeds, and glorify your Father in heaven. Brother Jordan brought this out to us in one of his messages. He said, this passage of Matthew 5, 6, and 7, this sermon is about kingdom people. If you're a kingdom person, if you're a Christian, you're part of the kingdom of heaven. This is you. This is how we are to be. And what Jesus is saying is this: the kingdom people make a difference. They're not just saved to sit, they're saved to serve. They're saved to be an influence in the world. They're kingdom people. There's something about them that will do good to others, do good to them to be saved, and certainly to be good for the kingdom of heaven itself. Brother Jordan also, and he said this before, and I like it. He says, you must know who you are before you know what to do. If you remember him playing with the words who and do, and then unfortunately he went too far with that one Sunday. If you get the do before the who, you have. But he's very accurate. The Beatitudes, in many ways, are the who. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the merciful. This is who you are. This is your character. These are the qualities of my people. Then he sort of cuts that off and immediately begins. As a matter of fact, the rest of 5, 6, and 7, as we go into it, will be about the doing. This is who you are. Now here's what you do. E. Charles Stanley was a very well-known pastor, preacher, teacher, author of the last century. In the midst of the 1970s, which was a very tumultuous time, some of you have no idea when the 70s were, some of us do. The 70s was in what's called the Vietnam era, and there was tumult and anarchy and unbelievable trouble in America during those days, much like today, very much like today, just a different kind of setting. And in that turmoil, Dr. Jones was asked, what importance or what's the problem with the church? How could this trouble in our nation and in our communities be to the extent that it is if there is a church? What's the problem with the church? He gave a one-word answer: irrelevance. Irrelevant. We see ourselves as relevant. But are we actually relevant to that which is outside the doors? Do we make a difference in our community, in our neighborhoods, at our job, in our nation? Do we make a difference being the people of God? Dr. Stanley said we've become irrelevant. You could say this: irrelevant means not relevant. It means not effective. How effective are we? Is the church ever brought up in the news other than something bad that happened? Has the church really changed anything? Mike Huckabee, I don't know if you know this or not, he was a preacher for a long time, governor of our state, ran for president. Mike Huckabee said this one time, I was very true. He says, here's how the culture goes. You have the culture that's very liberal, the culture that's conservative, and basically mainstream people are somewhere in the middle. You got extremes on both ends. He said, what's happened to the church is this: we were somewhere in the middle to the conservative, and as the culture has drifted more, and I'll say to the left, I'm not really hammering the left, has drifted away from the things they ought to be doing, as it's drifted more that way, we've just moved with it. We've just gone that way too. We're still in the middle, so to speak, but we're in the middle of going further to the bad. I thought that was a good observation. Have we become irrelevant? No influence, unnoticed by people. When we joined these two churches together, one of the things, at least I said several times, was this church has become invisible to the community. It's been here 100 years. And if we hadn't done if God hadn't led us to do what we did, it would become maybe this. Because something had happened. We had just drifted. We'd become irrelevant. Did you know this? Thousands of churches will close their doors this year in America. Not 10, not 100. Thousands will close their doors. How can that be? Now, I know there's all kinds of reasons for the dynamics, demographic dynamics, other things. I know there's all kinds of dynamics, but still, why would a church ever go out of business? Why would it ever become extinct? That's a good question, I think. Most churches that are still alive, if I could put it this way, are plateaued and declining. Gallup poll has done a poll of people asking them about their church membership for years. Matter of fact, for 80 years, Gallup has done a poll asking people about their church membership. 80 years. For most of the last 50 years, we have been in the high 70s. That is, 70% of the people asked were a member of a church. Now, of course, that's a broad term, but still, 70% answered they were some part of a membership of a church. Since the year 2000, going down till today, we've gone to below 50%. Now, and that doesn't mean active. That doesn't mean they're there all the time. In other words, we have gone like this as the people of God, and that's a very general term. That would include all denominations, all churches. We've drifted away. We've become irrelevant. We are not salt and light as we should be. Now, we're battling powerful forces that promote evil, that neutralize the good. Political correctness has sealed our lips. We're so afraid to speak up. Might lose our job. People are going to condemn us, make the front page of the news, just because of political correctness. There's things you cannot say anymore. And a lot of those things are church things, biblical things. Political correctness has just shut our mouths. The woke culture, y'all know what the woke culture is? This group does, that group doesn't. I had to look it up myself. And I finally figured out what they're talking about. But the woke culture has undermined our morality. Everything is accepted in the woke culture. There's no right or wrong. If it feels good, do it. That's the woke culture. And the church has blessed every bit of it. And then last, and it could make the list much longer, is do you realize that 2 years ago, the government of the United States they mandated that churches shut their doors? Now, I know we're talking about a disease, but the premise behind that is the government of the United States said to churches, you cannot meet in your building and have services. I'm just saying, think about that. I know there's a lot of dimensions, and some of you are saying, I'm glad they did or whatever. I'm just telling you, think of the premise of that. Shut your doors. Shut your mouths. As Jesus speaks, he gives 3 key words. The first is the word you. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. I've come to find out, in being in churches many, many years now, as the leader, that we have adopted something that's really old. It's an old dichotomy, but it is of the devil. And that is that there's the clergy and there's the laity. You ever heard those words before? The clergy is me and Jordan and Pranay. We're the clergy. Okay? The laity is you. And the work is to be done, the work of the church is to be done by the clergy, and the laity support them. That is of the devil. We together are the salt of the earth. You and I are the light of the world. There's no difference. None whatsoever. And remember now, Jesus is on a hillside talking to every manner of person out there. Every kind of person you could think of is out there. And he's looking at them and says, if you're a part of the kingdom of heaven, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. You are. It's a personal directive. You are. And the other couple of words is, you are to be the salt of the earth. You're to be the light of the world. And you are to be before men. You're the salt of the earth, the light of the world before men. Do your good works before men. It's an outward direction. In other words, I'm not just to be a good person. I'm to make that good person live out. The Christ who lives in me is to live through me out to whoever I'm around. I'm salt to anybody. I'm light to everybody. Let my salt and my light be before men. All men. Wherever you go, men. Whatever occupation you're in, men. Women, of course, too. You. And it has an outward direction to it. You are to be this before men. I'm always interested in words and what they exactly mean and how they were said. But I thought, and I almost hate to say this out loud because I don't want you to think that I ever think that Jesus used a wrong word or anything of that nature. But Jesus uses salt and light. Why would he use salt and light? He could have said, you're my people. You're my heroes. You're my children. He could have used a lot of different things and then said much the same thing, But he uses two very specific words. Light sort of makes sense, but salt doesn't make sense if you really just think of it as you first read it. You're salt. You are light. That's what Jesus chose to speak about his people, about you and me. We are salt and we are a light. That's a very interesting thing to me. And note this about salt and light. Both of them are essential for life. I'll explain that a little bit further here in just a moment. Both of those elements, salt and light, are essential. You cannot live without salt. You cannot live without light. They're essential. If we are to be that to the world, then we are important. We are difference makers. So, you are the salt of the earth. We are very used to modern conveniences. How many of you have a refrigerator? Amen for refrigerators. Refrigerator is a fairly modern invention, as you may not know, but it is. We're talking about 2,000 years ago when you look at Jesus here in this passage. They had no electricity and certainly didn't have any refrigerators. They had no way to preserve food as we do. I've had leftovers in the refrigerator for weeks. And they're preserved. Cultures is what they're preserved. Little green things are growing up out of them after. No, you can preserve something for, a good week or so, just sitting down in the refrigerator, pull it out, cook it, or warm it up. It's good. It preserves it. They had no way back then of preserving food, especially meat. If you take a piece of meat and lay it out in the sun, after about a couple hours, it is gray and stinks. It's decaying, it's rotting, it's corrupted. Salt is a preservative in Jesus' day, and in our day as well. Much of our food has salt in it to preserve it, but also to make it taste good. I was reading up on salt this week, which I've never really done before. Most of my life, I've heard that salt is bad. Cut the salt out of your life. I never realized how important salt is to you. You have to have a certain amount of salt intake. It affects your muscles. It affects your nerves. It affects your brain. It affects everything about you. You've got to have a certain amount of salt in you. Did you know this thing of salt being bad was spoken by someone 300 years ago, and we've kept it ever since? Now doctors are speaking differently about how salt affects us. Now, I'm not telling you just start going on a binge with salt, but I'm just telling you that salt is very important. You've got to have it. It works in your body in a very particular way to make you work good. You ever heard of a salt lick? Anybody ever know what a salt lick is? If you've ever been on a farm somewhere, or some guys feeding their deer, they'll have a salt lick out there. Animals can't get around, those kind of mammals cannot get around where there's salt. They're eating grass and things like that. There's no salt in it. And if they don't have salt, they'll die. That's what the salt lick is about. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? I like salt, by the way. But it's a preservative. It makes things taste good, but it's there for life as well. Without salt, it becomes decaying and even poisonous. You eat rotten meat, it's going to be like poison to you. So it's a preservative. Jesus knew they would understand that. It preserves things. It makes food tasty. And Jesus is making these applications to them. And here's what he's saying. First of all, you must get it out and in to the other person. Okay? A salt in the salt shaker is no good until you take the salt out of the salt shaker and put it on your food. Okay? In the salt shaker, it has no benefit. It must get out. And Jesus knew this, that to take the salt and then rub it in the meat, however they fix the meat or the fish to preserve it, it had to get out and in to the meat. In the same way, if we're to be the salt of the earth, our lives, our Christian lives, our kingdom lives must get out and into the ones around us. You are a preservative of your neighbor. You are preserving the corruption of your city as kingdom people. You are preserving your husband, your wife, your family, your children. You're a preservative. My goodness, how important that is. Let me put it this way. I and you are life givers to people because we are the salt of the earth. We're giving them life. But salt also adds taste, doesn't it? I've noticed this, that if I eat like potato chips, which has a good amount of salt on them, I usually want to drink something after that. If I get a bag of Lay's potato chips, I can't eat just one. I'll eat 101. Because you just keep on going. The more you eat, but after a while, it's going to make you thirsty. I think also the meaning of this is that there's an attractiveness. Now, people don't understand it, but there's an attractiveness, a drawing like a magnet about someone who's a child of God. I want you to know that. You may think you're not. I'm telling you, you are. People may not understand it. People may not even like it, but they're going to smell it. They're going to know it. They're going to feel it. They're going to be influenced by it. And in some people's lives, it's going to be a drawing. They're going to have a thirst for what you got. And you tell them what you got. You're the salt of the earth. You're the salt of the earth. It must get out. It must get in. And it just takes a little. Here's an encouraging word to you. If you're putting salt on your green beans, do you take all the salt that's in the shaker and put it on there? I hope not. Matter of fact, here's what I've seen. I don't do this. I've seen people do this. They'll do it in their hand and see how much there is, and then they'll do it. Because it's hard to tell how much there is, you know? So they go, some of them go more than once. But it just takes a little. My point, it just takes a little bit. It's so tiny, it's hard to see. It just takes a little. I want to read you. I thought this was a very fascinating quote from a sociologist. His name is Robert Bella. He's at the Institute of Advanced Studies at Princeton University, so he's got some clout. Listen to his words. We should not underestimate the significance of the small group of people who have a vision of a just and gentle world. The governing values of a whole culture may be changed when 2% of its people have a new vision. Just put some salt on it. Just a little dab will do you. Just put some salt on it. You don't have to be in the limelight, but your little bit of salt, which is all we do, a little bit of salt, will make a huge difference and change people's lives. You're the salt of the earth. There's a warning. Did you notice that both these have a warning? You're the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, I have no idea how that happens. But what he's saying is if it loses its ability to do preservative and to add flavor, if it loses that, it's good for nothing. Good for nothing. I would hate somebody to say that to me. Jordan, you're good for nothing. Man, that stings. Does that not sting? Hey, Pranay, good for nothing. Yeah, he's looking. Yeah. Ooh. If you're not letting the salt out, being the salt of the earth around you, Jesus says you're good for nothing. It's worthless, in other words. You're to be a difference maker. Note the warning. Note the warning. If you aren't functioning then you're good for nothing. You're useless. You're a failure. You're not as you should be. Let me just go as an aside here, I'll jump a track here so I'll chase a rabbit just for a second. Through the years, and y'all have seen this, you may have been in a church where this happened, where somebody in the church, a pastor, a minister, or it could be just anybody, but we'll take those that are at the top of the food chain, has made a grave mistake, has made a horrible mistake, has committed a bad sin, and they had to leave the ministry, let's say. We feel sad for them, certainly. We may try to rehabilitate them, but what does that do to those that are not Christians? Those that are not Christians, they see another Christian fall, they are 10 times worse off because they say, well, if that's what Christianity is all about, I want to have none of it. There's some you know that have been on television that have fallen, and they affected millions of people. Not the Christian people. Christian people are fairly forgiving. But the non-Christian people, they see that as a reason to stay just like they are. So be salt. Be salt. Someone said this, we're to be fishers of men, not keepers of the aquarium. We've got to get out of this building, out of the environment of where we are, and get out in the place where the salt is needed. Didn't you love that report of Pranay's earlier? The salt going out. You feel the salt going out? Now I'll tell you what it is. Yeah. Those groups he showed up there of those that are from other cultures, other religions, they want to know what the Bible says, want to know what Jesus is all about. There's old salt shakers going out there. Yeah. But that's getting out. I love our vision. I've told Jordan a couple of times, I asked him not too long ago, I said, where'd you get this vision? It's genius. In the city for the nations. In the city for the nations. We're here to share the salt. We're here to go out. We're here to affect those around us. Not to just enjoy this. Hey, I love being here with you folks. Isn't this a great place to be? Yes. But we're not to stay here. We're to go out. Salt is to be taken out, it's to be given out, it's to be moved out. We are here to live the salt out. And then he says, you're the light of the world. The definition of light is pretty simple. It means a source of illumination. Source of illumination. Have no light, you no see. Have y'all ever been up in North Arkansas, the Mammoth Caverns that are up there? A lot of caverns up there to travel there. If not, you need to go there. It's a beautiful thing to see. But in one of the caverns on the tour that they give you, they will have you sit in sort of like a amphitheater, and you sit there, and he'll tell you about, you're in a big open area in the caverns, and he'll show something over here, something there, and talk about the stalagmites and the whatever the kind of lights there are in there. One goes up, one comes down, etc. So you look at those things. Then he says, I want to show you total darkness. And they turn the lights out. Dude, that's dark. When you talk about can't see your hand in front of your face, in there you cannot see your hand in front of your face. But he did something very unique in the middle of that. He let you sit there for probably, it seemed like a half hour. It probably wasn't more than 2 minutes. And he lit a candle. It was like an explosion went off when that big candle lighter went off. He go, poof. That little bit of light destroyed all the darkness. That one little candle, that one little light destroyed all the darkness of that cavern in 1 second. Light destroys darkness. You're the light of the world. It illumines, it reveals. The Bible describes men as being lost, describes men as being sinful men. It describes that they are in darkness, and we have the light. Remember that little children's song, This Little Light of Mine? What do you do with it? Oh, let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. My favorite, shine your light till Jesus comes. I'm going to let it shine. I'm going to let my little light shine in Little Rock. We used to do all kinds of streets and things. My favorite was this. Don't let Satan it out. I'm going to let it shine. Yes, this little light of mine. Each one of you, you are the light of the world. You have the light in which people can see out of their darkness into the love of God, into the goodness of God. You have that light. Let your light shine. And, of course, your light is your good works. Let your good works shine. It says good works. The word there, good, means lovely, beautiful, beneficial, blessing to others. You're to make the world a better place because of you and letting your light shine. It's a better place. It's a better workplace. It's a better place in your schoolroom. It's a better place in your home. It's a better place in the neighborhood because your light shines. It shines. It reveals. It reveals. Isn't it amazing that when people come to know the Lord, they begin to see themselves as they really are? You ever notice that? When someone is lost and doesn't know Jesus, when they come to find Jesus, it's as if you showed them something they've never seen before. The light has illumined a whole new world for them. It's revealed that. And of course, light guides. I love the last part of verse 16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works. And you remember what it says? And glorify your Father which is in heaven. I'm sad to say many people do good works in order that they may be glorified. But we're to do good works so that it draws them, it points them, it shines the light on the Father. That's really good works. It draws people to the Lord. We are to be difference makers. Difference makers. Jesus has a warning for this. He says, a light that is on a hillside, a city that's on a hillside, cannot be hidden. It's there to shine. He says you don't take a light, he says, you put it under a basket or a bowl. No, you put it on a lampstand so that it shines out all over. In other words, don't hide your light. Let me encourage you with this. One of the most terrifying things that many people told me that they have is having to tell somebody about Jesus. Why is it so terrifying to tell somebody about Jesus? I'll tell you one reason, because the devil's told you that. Or many people, let me put it this way, many people think that you share, here's how you share Jesus with somebody. You're at the Kroger store, and you're there in the green bean aisle, and you walk up to a stranger, and you say, hey, I want to tell you about Jesus. That might not be bad, okay? I'm not putting that down. But I'm saying many people think that's how you share Jesus. No, that's not the only way to share Jesus. If you know Jesus and you're living him out in your life, and you're doing good things, and you're a blessing to others, and you're not doing bad things, if you're that kind of person around others, then there will be a natural time, an invitation time, in which you can talk to them about why you're the way you are, about their life. They may come to you with a problem. Now you're able to share with them about that problem and talk with them about Jesus. But the devil has scared us into this shining our light. We want to shine our lives, and we need to shine our lives. That's what it's all about. Listen, this day we live in is a dark day, is it not? I hesitate to look at the news now. Did you know that last weekend we had 10 shootings in Little Rock? Did you know that Little Rock is the #1 capital in the United States for crimes per 1,000 people? Hey, we're #1. First time ever in crime. Here in Little Rock, in our city, number one in crime. The pandemic has run roughshod over everybody that's alive. That's going on. It looks like we're in the midst of World War III over in Ukraine. That's going on. There's a drug problem in our nation like we haven't seen possibly before, ever, killing and harming thousands upon thousands. If there ever was a time for our light to shine, it's now. If there was ever a time for Hillcrest Church to be the church of salt and light, it's now. It's now. And the good thing of it is, we will change lives. We will make a difference as we become salt and light into our community. We're kingdom people. We're kingdom people. Jesus prayed, "Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." We're those folks. We're those that are salt and light to make the kingdom come right here and wherever you are day by day. This past week I was talking with somebody, and I think he had retired or something like that, because we were talking about retirement. I'm not retired, but he was. And he said, "You know, Mitch," he said, "the word retire is not in the Bible." And I said, "You're probably right." He was making a point that we're always to be working, we're always to be serving the Lord, and that's true. There's never a time to sit on the sidelines. There's never a time to say, "Hey, let somebody else do it." No, the time is now for every one of you to be salt and light. I close with just a sort of an illustration. Someone said that the 3 stages of a church are, it starts out as a risk taker. You know, folks, I believe we're there. It starts out as a risk taker, but don't get complacent, because churches go from risk taking to caretaking. It gets to be so good, they say, "Let's just keep it like it is. We don't want it to change." You know what the 7 last words of the church are? "We've never done it that way before." That's death. No, they like the way things are. All the bills are being paid. This is just a smooth running machine, but they're not risk takers anymore. You know what the 3rd stage of a church is? Undertaker. It's over, because it's going just like this. And unless something is interjected, that does happen, is interjected, you can start over as a risk taker again. I believe 2 years ago that happened. Bam! Off we go. Hillcrest is in that first stage of risk taking. We don't, listen, Jordan said, how did you put it, Jordan? "I'm going to share with you what I'm thinking today." And he had his head down like that. I thought, oh my goodness. I thought it was something bad. I'm not going to tell you what he said yet. I may one of these days, or he may share it with you. But he has a dream of something. And he thought I would be shaken by him telling me what that dream was. I said, "Glory." It's beyond where we are now. It's looking ahead. It's bigger than what we are. It's preparing for a future of being salt and light like we've never seen it before. That's a great place to be. God wants us to be in that place right there as risk takers, being the salt and light to our community, to the nations even. As I was talking to Jordan Pernay just a couple of days ago, we were talking about that very thing and a few other things and some of our plans and so forth. And I said, "You know what this is called? It's called the divine itch. It's something you never can quite scratch, but you just keep on scratching. It's called the divine itch. Never become satisfied. Never think this is all there is. Never think we're at the end of the line. Never think it's so good it can't get any better. No, we're the salt and the light of the world. And we want ourselves to be influencers and light to a lost world right here. Amen.